Hello and welcome everyone. I'm RJ Kerr and welcome back to Let's Write an Adventure, where we are creating a D&D adventure from start to finish in real time. Currently continuing our adventure that takes the characters from the town of Sky Song Gulch to a glacial fortress in the middle of the wastelands called the Berg, where they're seeking our MacGuffin cold iron, a material used uh, for powerful anti-fey magic. They believe that the town is going to use this cold iron to repel the onslaught of the Bloodgood Sisters, an evil coven of hags who's been threatening the village. Um, but when they return, they're going to find out that, in fact, the village plans to pay off the hags with this, forcing the characters to make a choice to either accept that decision or to oppose that and try to oppose the Bloodgood Sisters. So today we are continuing on with the map making portion of this, which we've been working on for the last couple episodes. Um, we're really just adding in line work, working on doors, talking our way through this as we go. So today's going to be a pretty chill live stream. So it's a good one that if you're working on your own adventure in real time to kind of bust that out and hang out and listen and chat while we work on this together. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and share my screen. Let's get back into Krita. So again, the art program we're using for this is Krita, and we're just using stock materials. Everything that comes with the default Krita download, and then we've made a couple of our own stamps. We'll probably end up making some more of those today, so we'll cover that process again if you haven't seen it. But we've got two floors to the Berg, our big dungeon complex. This is our fortress level, and then we still have our mine level to do, which we really only sketched out. That'll go a little faster since these lines are pretty organic, and so we're just kind of going to be drawing those into place. Um, but for now, let's keep working on our fortress level, and we'll knock that out before we move on. So last time I was putting doors in place. We've obviously made a couple little oopsies here. Oops, that's not what I want. That's a pen. Pens don't erase. All right. So we'll go through and kind of edit this as we go, but we also have this kind of ugly line that goes to the doors, makes them they don't read as well. So I'm gonna start, I think, today by just filling those in. I could theoretically go to my wall layer and erase that, and you know what? That's perfectly viable. It gives it a cool look. It may even look a little bit better, but it's also a little tedious. And for the amount of doors we have in here, I'm not sure I really want to spend the time. I don't know that I add that much to the map. And really, stuff like this is really comes down to a question of time versus value, and just how much energy you want to put into this. If a really just spectacular looking map is important to you, then hey, yeah, take the time, draw it out, get into the art. There's like nothing in the world wrong with that. But if you're really just kind of putting something together to get an adventure going, to give your characters an idea of what's happening in the game and in their situation, yeah, you don't always need all of the really fine-tuned details. So entirely up to you. That being said, there's something really just soothing about. Oop, that doesn't work. All right, we have a door that's on the wrong layer. So, all right. But yeah, there's something really soothing about just building out maps, drawing them out for the adventures that you're going to create for your characters. Um, I think I mentioned this last time, but I will frequently, when I'm doing this, another mistake. Frequently, when I'm doing this, I will I'll just put on some music or even just some relaxing kind of background noise and just kind of let my mind relax. Um, one of the one of the real difficulties to you know what, I'm not even gonna say it's a difficulty, but one of the strains of the creative process is that it takes a lot of mental energy. You may have actually found that you were you get really tired after you spend a lot of time being creative or trying to come up with creative ideas, especially when you're doing things like writing adventures from scratch. And that's actually normal. If I'm remembering my organic chemistry correctly, that would be due to a buildup of glutamate in your uh, yeah, in your between your neurons. And so effectively, the harder you think, the more creative you get, the more glutamate you build up. Um, and that causes that sense of tiredness, which, you can get rid of by relaxing a little bit. Sleep being the most effective way to do that. Again, if I'm remembering my organic chemistry correctly. But other activities that just require less thought can do the same kind of thing. So, map making is one of those things that requires a little bit of stimulation, but not a whole lot. Okay, well, it looks like we've made a couple mistakes here. So let's wipe those bad boys out, shall we? Anyway, it's nice to just sit and chill sometimes. Work on this. I'm gonna get a little finer with that. I wish I could remember the hotkey for adjusting size, but I don't. So here we are. Okay. Yeah, see, this is the frustration of putting things in the wrong layer, which, I mean, it happens, obviously. But it means that we've got to be very careful as we come in here and work. Now, there's always Control Z, the undo tool, to undo immediate mistakes. For example, if I just was like, I put a line through that, I can just Control Z and we're good. And again, this map is kind of 4 players specifically by players, and that means that we don't really have to get too worried about it. So if there's a little bit of that one, sometimes it means it's worthwhile to pause in between these things too, so that your Control Z doesn't go all the way back. Lift that pen. But it's still not always my favorite part of this, to sit here and correct mistakes, errors. Although every time I say that when I'm doing art, I get like a little bit of Bob Ross in my head. Happy accidents, happy little trees. Talk about a soothing voice. All right, cool. What do you want to lay odds? We had the same issue up here. Oh, yeah, we do. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Look at that. Okay. So if you really want to get good at map making, and I say that as though I'm spectacular, which is just, let's be honest, not the case, but functional, absolutely functional. I freely admit, perfection being the enemy of progress, and it being my goal to progress. I don't worry too much about perfection, but there are definitely significantly better map makers out there. It's absolutely worthwhile following a couple channels on YouTube of some stellar examples. I think I mentioned 2 Minute Tabletop before. That I think that channel in particular was is one that was hugely helpful to me when I first started trying to make my own maps. Um, it just you know I think that Ross, the 2 Minute Tabletop guy, explains things very well in terms of his map making style, and I like what he puts out. I like his style of his artwork. He's fairly popular, so I imagine you're probably familiar with him based on who my videos get pushed out to on the algorithm. But that's okay. If you're not, check him out. Um, there's a bunch of others out there. He's just a personal favorite of mine. Um, and I think, yeah, like one of the first people I ever supported on Patreon. Um, but anyway, there's a lot of those kinds of videos out there that give you kind of tips and tricks, and like 90% of them can be applied to Krita. It's just change the tool. Yeah, so it makes it really easy to kind of get some basics down, and then start applying that with practice and improving your techniques as you get better. For example, for a long time, I was really just, making these kind of very simple, bare bones line art walls that didn't even have any of this roughness to them. They were just like they were just the hard round brush, here like that, varying thickness, which is fine. It functions. It does the job, but it wasn't the look I was going for. I was looking for a little more drawn, um, kind of a drawn feel to it, um, and uh, and so watching those videos kind of helped me figure out how to do that in digital art, and help me practice on perspective and figure out the purpose of line weight, what it does for me, and all those little details um, that I learned just by watching those videos. So they're incredibly helpful. The various channels that do this. So highly, highly recommend. And while I would love to say that I will someday provide that level of map making quality tutorial, and maybe I will, who knows, never say never, uh, my skill set lies more heavily in the writing side of things than the map making side. Although it's worthwhile to know how to do more than one thing in this life. So, uh, why am I trying to do those lines? That's silly. It's working, but it's silly. Cool. Anyway, if any of you are working on your own adventures, I would really love to hear what you've come up with and what you're building out if you want to share. I mean, no pressure. Sometimes it's nice to kind of keep a creative project to yourself until it's a little more fleshed out. So you can kind of spring the whole thing on people fully formed, and makes it a lot easier for them to stand back and go, "That was incredible. Uh, how could you ever think of this?" Um, you know, when they don't see, how the sausage gets made. But there's also value in being able to workshop ideas with people, and that is something that in the writing world, um, we do quite a bit. This idea of writers groups, where people who are working on their various texts, they get together, they talk about the stuff, they read drafts, share drafts with each other, and you get feedback from people who um, are as well in the weeds as you are, who have the same kind of understanding the process that you have, and but might have a different point of view. Will notice things that you didn't because you're so in the weeds on your particular project. Um, and I haven't really seen much of that for uh, for for writers in the TTRPG space. That is something that I would like to put together uh, at some point. In fact, I think it'd be pretty straightforward to set it up on something like Discord. So if that's something that you are interested in, please let me know, and I will happily get that put together and rocking and rolling. It only works if people want to participate, though. Writers group that nobody wants to go to or participate in is, well, it's one person sitting alone in a room writing. So we can do that without the use of the internet. Um, but if that is something that interests you, as it would interest me, reach out. Happy to spearhead that. So let's see where I am on my doors. Getting close. Getting close. All right. Obviously, I need some double doors in places here. We're getting there. We are getting there. So let's continue on pumping out some of the other details in the space. Let's get our pillars in here. Mm-hmm. Someday I will remember to change the color. Someday. As I said before, we could probably copy and paste and do all that kind of stuff here. I think if we hold shift and click, nope, I don't have that hotkey set. All right. Yeah, but we can just match it to the size of our grid. Copying and pasting these little circles is all well and good. It unfortunately creates just like an individual layer for each and every one, which you can go back and merge into a single layer. Like that's something that you can do in this program. So it's not like you're going to end up with permanently with a series of 12 dozen different layers that just have a column in them. So you can do it that way, or you can just make them each individually. Sometimes I like to make them each individually just so that they're not quite perfectly uniform. I find that just adds a little variation, makes it look a little more hand drawn, which is again is kind of the style I'm going for here. So this is kind of our throne. So let's just add some basic. Let's zoom in and do this properly. And if you're doing a lot of a particular detail, like this throne here, and you want to make a stamp of that, you absolutely can. Cool. That kind of looks throne-like, chair-ish, at least enough to fake it. Cool. Now let's hit some double doors. And some secret doors. And then we're going to add some depth and some shading around the sides so that we can actually very easily tell what's a room and what's negative space. And then we'll move on to the Berg. Well, I guess it's all the Berg. I guess we'll move on to the mine level then. Where the hungry ghouls are. Okay, so double doors should be twice the thickness of this, which means that we can do this in two ways. So let's see what works best. We want to kind of line that up here-ish. Then here-ish. That's going to make something that is almost perpetually uneven. So, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. So I'm going to make a stamp for this then. And I'm going to make this one just a little bit off sides here so that I know that I can fix it later. Again, why am I trying to do this line tool? That's just silly. Super close. All right. That is, let's try overlapping them just a little bit then. There we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for at a Minecraft level. Okay, so again, let's keep that black. Let's turn off all of our other layers. Selection tool. Okay. Stamperoni. Okay, predefined. Nope, we're turning off that. We're turning off that. Go to stamp. Berg. Double doors. Okay, save that. Ooh, those are absolutely just enormous. So let's resize that. Okay. And not sure why they're kind of, well, because we're so zoomed in. That's why. Let's, cool. Why not? All right, so let's hit save new brush preset. Berg, double doors. Okay, save that. And we're good. So now we can deselect, because I've been doing that lately, where I leave that selected, and I'm so confused why I can't. Yeah, why I can't work in that layer. So we can zoom out a little bit here. Let's go ahead and erase that. Bad boy. Oh, Jesus. My goodness. All right. And then we can recenter that where I want it. So, to that end, let's get this guy so that he's, ooh, maybe not that big. You know what? I want him double, so let's, what do we say? These were like, what, 70 pixels, something like that? Maybe a little larger. That's about right. 81, something like that. Okay. Cool. So let's pop him in the center. And let us see how he, let's try this again. Let's see how he looks. Cool. Let's hit that fill tool. Go back down to white. How are we doing? Not as lovely. So, not entirely sure why we're getting a little bit of gray on that. But yeah, that's not, there's some opacity in here. So let's edit that brush. Let's see what's going on with the brush settings. Interesting. There's no issue with the opacity, size, space. Very curious. Very curious. So let's, try that again. Let's try different. Let's try to do this again. It's all problem solving. Everything is problem solving. So let's come here and let's just create a size that makes sense to us. So let's say that it's going to be, I don't know, like that. Cool. Then we'll put a line down the center so we know it's a double door. And let's try this again. Cool. All right. V2. Okay, save. Clear that. And let's just make it that, make it simple. I don't know why I'm overcomplicating this for myself, other than just to see, make sure I can tell a difference. Let's say Berg double doors V2. Save. That isn't gonna help me. Let's scratch put thumb. Save. There we go. Much better. All right. And let's see how we're doing. We got these guys, which means let's go ahead and erase that set of doors. Cool. We said what? Something like 81, somewhere there, 80, kind of what we were looking for. Try that. Much better. There we go. I don't know what we did wrong, but I'm going to recenter that just a little bit. There we go. Sometimes it's just fiddling around with stuff to see what works. These guys probably wouldn't be double doors. They're probably a portcullis. So probably just going to edit the wall layer on that. But let's get these guys knocked out first. And fill tool. Fill. Cool. Those read rather nice. And then we want double doors over there. But instead of making a new brush, I'm just going to go to image and rotate 90 degrees. And use the same brush. Zoom a little bit. Helps though if I remember to change the color. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and fill that in. Excellent. All right. Rotate that back to my original orientation. And now I think we are ready for secret doors. Let's go ahead and get the portcullis at the front done. So with portcullis, we could do this a couple different ways. We can start by going ahead and clearing out the space that we're looking for. I'm just gonna make myself some easy lines there and then erase the middle. All right. And we can either leave this as a gap, meaning that it shows that there's an opening in the interior here, or we can put in some dots and make this make an indication that there is a portcullis that blocks this. And I think just leaving it open makes it look kind of unfinished. So I think we're going to use the dots. I think we're going to go dot method here. So we're just going to, again, put some circles in here with our tool. And come on, Rob. Come on. Something like that. Then we're going to fill that, which didn't fill beautifully. All right. Just going to color that in. And in this case, I think I am going to copy and paste and then merge. So let's say select, copy, paste. Where did you paste? Oh, it pasted within the, of course. Okay, deselect. And we're going to say paste. There we go, paste in the same spot, of course. And we're just going to put one there, paste. There, paste. There. And just kind of do the same. We could make an effort to make sure these are lined up, or we can just kind of leave them a little bit sloppy. Not really worry about it too much, which I think is what I'm going to kind of do here. Because again, it gives it a little more of a hand-drawn feel to it. Then I'm just going to select all of these wall pages here. And I'm just going to say Shift, right-click, and say merge with layer below. Cool. If we want to see that we've got, yep, we've got all but that dot on there, which is fine. To be honest with you, let's just go ahead and just merge it with the layer below, so it's part of the walls now. That makes things very simple. Great, okay. Portcullis, so we're onto our secret doors. There's only 2 of them here. I don't know that I'm going to bother with a stamp for these then, although you could. Certainly you could. I'm just going to freehand these, I think. And I've got my brush smoothing on, so that's going to help. But these are doors. They need to go in the door panel or the door tab here, and probably going to beef up that number a little bit just to give these a little more weight. Cool. Cool. Good enough. Good enough. Then let's come back over here. Well, let's start a new layer because we're going to start adding details into here, and those I like to keep separate from kind of the foundational elements here. Like typically I would have put, this throne on the details page, but I got excited and it happens. So let's hit that. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make an indication of depth for this mine shaft. So we're going to take a square tool and we're just going to draw an inner layer here. And then we're going to connect that. It should be the same size as everything else. So actually, to be honest, it should be a lower line weight so that we can tell that it is farther away, because our eye is going to read bigger, thicker lines as closer than thinner lines. So by making it just a little bit thinner, we trick our brains into understanding that it is actually farther away from us. We'll do that, a little bit more of that when we add some shadow in here. Cool. Got a little bit of depth. If I really want to get in the nitty gritty on this, I can go through and add little boxes into the rooms and that kind of thing. And we'll probably do that after we finish writing the adventure, so we kind of really know what's in there, and we have suggestions to our various characters about what they're seeing. But for the moment, I think we're going to leave the details page alone, and we're going to add another, or details layer alone. We're going to add another layer. This one's going to be shadow. And this layer is we're going to drop that opacity down to like 25%. We're going to keep it black. We're going to move it down below the walls. Then I like to use this charcoal rock soft brush because it gives a nice little rough kind of shadowy layer here. And then we're just going to give these spaces a little bit of depth. And to do that, we're going to want to pretend as though light is coming in from an angle, right? We're going to want to imagine perhaps that light is coming in from, this direction, so that only the walls that would be blocking that light get a shadow with them. And it'll give our eye a sense of depth and make it easier to read this map. So first things though, let's go ahead and get that down to, let's try 20. Let's see how that feels here. I want to keep these relatively straight since I've got relatively straight walls for the moment. So I'm going to use the polyline tool. And so I'm just going to click, 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 shift click. Yeah, it gives me about what I'm looking for. So let's do that. Cool. Just a little bit of depth here. So just the left wall and the top wall of all of our spaces. Oh, helps if I, oh, jeez, just undid that. I cannot tell you how many times I've done that in this game, or in this event, or in Krita, this game. Wow. Okay, so to make this a little clearer, I'm going to drop a sketch layer here. So again, I'm going to drop the sketch layer here, and I'm going to, let's see, play around a little bit with the weight on this, just so I get the walls, or the shadows I'm looking for. That's pretty good. That's close enough. But you can kind of see that the room immediately starts to take on a little bit more depth when we do this. So we're literally just doing this with everything. The nice thing about putting this layer beneath things like the doors and the walls means that we can be a little sloppy with this, and it's not the end of the world. For example, I can come over here and do like that, and oh yeah, I get a pretty good shadow like that, right? Nice and easy. So if you want kind of the highlights of what I'm doing here in terms of like the processes, I do have a video coming out tomorrow that goes over what we're talking about here, kind of step by step, to give you a more referenceable guide, because I am aware that my live streams are in many ways a stream of consciousness. So that doesn't always make for the best learning material. But it has its place, and it can be useful. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we're just going to do that for all of this. Tedious as it can be sometimes, but just get into that, ideally into that chill out flow state. Just enjoy the process. Okay, yeah, and you have angles like this, I mean, just follow them to the best of your best of your ability. Doesn't have to be perfect. You know, you might get a little weird like that and just angle it off a little bit. We can do that for these fixed surfaces as well. Uh, and yeah, because then, you know, we can come in here and just erase that out. We still get that nice shadow. Gives it a sense of depth. You know, and if we want to use our, you know, our pen tool or something like that would be more appropriate here for some of these curves, but we do kind of the same deal, right? So they, you know, hard pressure so it doesn't look opaque, but they get kind of that quarter treatment here. I guess there. Yeah. Just try to be as even as you can. But again, effort versus payout, right? Sometimes it's just not worth it to get too stressed out about the details. One, your players hardly notice. Two, if they do notice, they understand that you put a lot of work into this. And three, if they understand that you put a lot of work into this and they notice the details and they still give you a hard time about it, well, tell them that it's their turn to DM. Because DMing the process is not terribly difficult, but creating anything from scratch does take some time and effort that many people are not willing to put into the process. All right. That being said, I thoroughly believe that putting in that time and effort to make something creatively that fits your own vision is almost universally worth it. Or else I wouldn't do this. So, guess I'm biased. Take that with a grain of salt. But yeah. Okay. You know, I have to admit that at first I wasn't super stoked about kind of the some of the odd angles that some of these rooms end up coming on with. But the more I think about the fact that it's supposed to be inside of a glacier, it makes sense to me. I like it. I feel better about it with that in mind. That just makes it seem a little less perfect and a little more mortal made. You know, I wouldn't say man made since we said these were, you know, elves who did this, but mortal made for sure. Add some flavor. Big fan of flavor. Flaws are some of the best flavor because very little of what is made in this life is perfect. Things, in fact, that are too perfect often seem off to savvy characters, or savvy players, I should say. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have made something that was about as perfect as I could make it, only to have my characters so suspicious because all of the other things that they had run into had imperfections. Not that that happens often with right angles in rooms, but as a general thing, it does. But yeah, so we can kind of see that we're already getting that depth here, where it's a lot easier to tell what's a room and what's negative space. Just making this place read a little easier, a little nicer. Probably going to come about part of the way down on that one. Cool. And really, the first function of a map is to be read. It's to provide information. So any little extra bit of effort that you put in that helps it do that is going to make it an easier map to use. Of course, there is a place where that becomes too much information. It starts to dilute the vital information with non-vital information. So just watching out for that as you work through your process. And if the shadows aren't uniform, what does it really matter? As long as they do their job. All these fiddly little spaces here. Gotta remember to do these little doors. There we go. I say there we go, and then it's not quite what I want. Control Z is a very useful tool. I'll tell you what. There we go. That's better. Much better. No, this one's going to be, yeah, interesting at best. Cool. Wonder why that's doing such an odd angle. It's like snapping two, which is not what I want it to do. Let's try that. That's better. Okay. All right. Making progress. Okay. See, that snap 2 thing is just not... It's just no bueno. It's not what I want. Really not sure where that's coming from, though. Oh, all right. Now these guys. You know, it's fun to come up with all kinds of little spaces in your adventures, but at the end of the day, you've got to do something with those spaces, which can sometimes make you regret coming up with those interesting little spaces. But you know what? When it comes time to play, all the work that you put into this stuff, you know, it becomes very much worth it, I think. Especially when you get to watch how much fun your players are having, story, get to hear their excitement, get to participate in that excitement. Yeah, there's just not much better than that. Okay. Okay. One little room of fiddly cells down, and one section more to go. Cool. But you see, this goes by faster than you think it's going to go with these, polyline tool kind of stuff. You don't have to hand draw this in all the time, and and try over and over and over again to get it right. You can just draw a line and go, draw a line and go. You can use the just the regular line tool if you want to. The polyline just makes it easier to do some of these connecting lines. Which can make your life simpler in some places and more complicated in others. So do what works best for you. At the end of the day, that's the best thing you can do in any creative endeavor, I think. Ooh, I forgot that little corner there, did we? Okay. And we should do the same here to show that it is lower. Cool. Let's clean that up just a touch. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. Portcullis is going to be fun to do with shadow. Just a little swish here and there. Make all the difference. And if you really, if you get into doing these and you want to add color, it's really easy to colorize your maps in Krita too. And then you can get into drawing in light sources and all that kind of stuff, which is, I think, probably more than we're going to put into the Berg. Although, you know what, we'll see. If I get a lot of requests for that, I may do a bit on that. But colorizing in Krita is, especially just laying color flats, is just so easy. They've got some really cool tools to make that just a piece of cake. I am admittedly still learning all of the things that Krita could do, and I have been impressed with its capabilities, at least in terms of what I do with digital art, like, this stuff. Um, and the fact that it's free means I don't have to spend the, $500 a year to get Adobe's Creative Cloud. Which, admittedly, powerful product, but not being a professional artist, don't need that much power. Okay. Home stretch now with the shadows. Okay. There. There. Cool. Okay, so now we're looking at what the columns, the portcullis. Yeah, that might be it for the shadow on this, at least for the rooms here. When we kind of draw in some contours here, we'll add some shadow, that kind of deal. But let's get this in, and then let's just kind of draw in some, once we get these shadows in place here, And let's draw in some hatching around our negative space, just so that it's really easy to see our rooms. From kind of the rest, the unplayable area, I should say. Um, just makes it a little easier for us to read. Just put a little smudge at the end of these guys here. Just to give them some height. Good enough. Good enough. Cool. Yeah, so if we zoom out, we can see that now it looks like the rooms themselves are kind of sunken in. It gives us a visual cue of what's playable space. So let's take that a step further. Let's make another layer, and let's say hatching. And hatching in Krita is so much easier than anything else because we've got this cool little screen tone tool here that literally is just it's hash marks, right? So it's does that, which is lovely. I think we're going to dial the size down a little bit to better match our grid size. So grid's what, 50 pixels? So let's do that. Let's see how that looks. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that looks pretty good. So something to be aware of in this is that when you use the brush tool on this and you just kind of paint it in, you'll notice it doesn't come in as clear because there's an opacity based off the pressure that you put in. So the harder I push, the darker it becomes, and so that can make it a little frustrating to put in with the brush tool. So again, this is another place where I just like to take this, our line tool and polyline tool and just kind of move around, knowing that I can clean all this stuff up later because the polyline tool is going to put sort of that maximum darkness in there. See, it's going to do it to its full effect. And again, since I'm in a new layer and I went over here, I don't want that there. Okay, well, I just erase it. NBD, cool. So I can just kind of do a little bit of overlap, but I'm really just kind of targeting towards the middle of a grid square. And it's part of the reason why I do it this large, so that I know basically what it's going to fill and where I want my line to go, where I want there to be some overlap. Now, that being said, you can get in there with the brush and do it. And something that I will likely do here is just kind of draw in some around the edges to make it a little less, some fewer hard lines. Makes it look a little more organic, I think. But that's me. There's really no right or wrong answer here. But this just gives us a much clearer distinction between negative space and room space here, like that. So if we zoom out, we can see that just reads a lot easier to the eye. So yeah, so we're just doing this again. More lines. More point and click. Pointy click click time. Okay. All right. But since we're just kind of doing negative space, we're just kind of in the interior here, and we know that it fills up a grid, so it's easy to kind of just do that and fill up a space. Again, makes it very, very simple to do this. And I like simple when it comes to maps. I like things that make my life easier because I want to spend more time playing and less time prepping. Cool. people, which I think is a mostly universal feeling. I would imagine. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some folks that would much rather write an adventure than play it. I think those are novelists, um, which I will admit is also a goal of mine. But there is something that you just can't capture in any other medium about writing and playing tabletop role playing games. They're the way the story unfolds so organically in them. I think uh, is unique to that media. Um, you aren't limited in any of the by any of the constraints that you would get in more traditional, uh, in more traditional works. So let's put that in. Oop. You know, that collaboration just makes it so powerful, so much fun. You know, especially during the pandemic, D&D was one of the ways that my friend group, you know, still managed to get together and see each other because we could play in a virtual tabletop, and with very little, with very little difficulty. Um, so we actually started a campaign during the pandemic uh, on my birthday, and that adventure has been running at least every other week ever since. Um, so, I mean, it's those collaborative storytelling elements are just really powerful things, not just in artistically, but just as a way to kind of bring people together. You've probably experienced something similar at your tables. I think a lot of people who get really passionate about D&D have. 'Cause it's hard, I think, not to really be drawn into that when it works the way that it should, when TTRPGs bring people together and let them create their own worlds and fantasies. I think it's very difficult not to um, not to have a good time when it does that. Well, that being said, I think this is where we're going to go ahead and stop for the day. We've done a lot here. We can see that. Even just looking at taking away what we had done last time, we can see already where we've changed so much from what we had. And now we have a much more viable, more professional looking map. And while it's taken a little bit of time, a lot of that's just because of the scale of this map. So if you're doing it on a smaller scale, it goes by much faster, and as you get more practice at it, it goes by far more quickly as well. So anyway, we're going to put a pin in that there. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll continue on with this next week, which would bring us on to what? So July 6th. Wow, July already. Wonderful. Um, we'll finish up the hatching here. We'll move on to doing the Berg mine level, and then we'll jump back to finishing up writing our adventure. But we're kind of in the home stretch for that. So start thinking about what you want me to do on the live streams after we finish up this adventure, our adventure at Skysong Gulch. I've got some ideas, but I'd love to hear yours. If there's things you're interested in me covering or going over, let me know in the comments. Again, I'm RJ Kerr. Thank you so much for watching. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon so that you never miss a video. And if you want to see all of my TTRPG content, check out my website at rjkerr.com. Talk to you later.